Hey everyone, my name is Zach. I'm a 23-year-old competitive boulderer from Canada, currently living near Toronto. Welcome back to the COMPCLIMB training series, where I'll record most of my training, provide in-depth analysis of every session, and just chat about climbing with an emphasis on competition. So today we are here for a kilter board session, and this session is quite exciting in particular because I finally made a boulder on the kilter board. So it's interesting. One of my biggest draws to the kilter board, I would say, is being able to try other people's problems and eliminating sort of the forerunning process of training that's required for spray wall training. And it's also just nice to test yourself against other people's boulders. So that's why, for the most part, I think when we train on the kilter, I'll be trying like other people's boulders and just trying like the popular stuff that's like been tested a lot and lets me sort of really test myself against others. But of course, I do like to make boulders, and I thought at least I should start off my kilter journey by making up one boulder, and then maybe down the road we can make another one. So this boulder I made here, I actually made at the end of the last kilter board session that I had. I just made it up as I finished, and then I pulled on each individual move really quickly and just tested it to make sure it would be possible, so that I could set myself up, set up my next kilter board session so that I could just focus on doing it rather than like testing it. So I knew all the moves were definitely possible going into this session, and I could just focus on sending it. And this boulder is a lot of fun. As you can see, we were doing some pretty funky moves on the kilter board. Definitely not your typical kilter problem. I definitely wanted to make something with like a jump. The first thing that stuck out to me when I was making this boulder was definitely not this ending sequence here, which you can see is very awkward. It was these two Gastons in the middle. They're just like really nice, comfy holds. And I wanted to make, like, I would say not a lot of the kilter board problems are just sort of, relaxing on the hands. It's usually very taxing. And so I wanted to challenge myself to make something that was actually kind of relaxing on the hands, but was hard because of the movements and like the body positions and just like the other elements of what makes a boulder hard. So like, especially at the beginning here, like we're actually using some quite positive holds. They're like kind of slopers as well. So we start off with this nice little campus move into these Gastons. This is a super comfortable position. And then the hardest move of this boulder is definitely this double clutch campus move. And what was interesting actually is, I didn't realize this until I had started working the boulder for a bit, was this campus move, this double clutch, is actually gonna be quite, like the difficulty of this problem is gonna be determined by the height of your kickboard. So if you want to try this boulder, actually this doesn't really come into play with kilter board problems a lot of the time, because you're not sort of trying to do a swing move to generate momentum. But the higher the kickboard, the easier this move is going to be. So I find that the kickboard I'm using right now is sort of medium. Like what I have to do when I'm doing the swing move is I obviously have to bend my legs so I'm not dabbing, right? And that makes it really hard to swing for this move. It makes it really awkward because my legs are bent, and that's not like the optimal way to sort of generate momentum for this move. And so it was really strange actually. While I'm trying this move, I know that it should be feeling a bit easier. Like I have a good intuition for how this sort of move should be feeling based on like how positive the holds are and the distance. But as I'm trying it, it's obviously harder than I think it should be. And that's because the element of like trying not to dab and generating momentum while your legs are bent was actually really difficult to get the hang of. So it made for an interesting element of this boulder. And obviously, anyone watching that wants to try this, I would please recommend you try my boulder. I definitely want to see people try this. I think it would be a lot of fun. But just keep in mind, the height of the kickboard is going to be changing the difficulty of this boulder. So I do end up sending it, and I gave it a grade of V12 based on like the other V12s I've done on the kilter board. This is taking me a bit longer, so that's what my feeling is. But I think it's actually going to be really, like this boulder will definitely vary a lot in difficulty with the kickboard heights, which will be interesting. But you can see mine is sort of like, the footholds are right above my knee if I'm standing up by the kilter board. So that's sort of how I've been trying it. But it actually is making for an interesting challenge. It's like, maybe this sort of move can come up in like a competitive, in like a comp, on a comp boulder somehow, like you have to do some sort of swing move where you don't have to dab. So I guess in a way I was sort of practicing the element of swing while you're trying not to dab. So it's actually kind of good to work on this boulder. And then the ending of this boulder is also really awkward as well. You got a really high foot. And I just wanted to make something, I like foot first sequences when I make boulders. So I just like, as soon as I do this double clutch, I'm like, okay, let me put my foot above my head and then try and make a sequence. And so we have a really awkward ending sequence to finish off this boulder. But as you can see, I'm starting to get closer to this double clutch, and you'll notice that I keep running the ending even after I've stuck it a few times. And this is just to keep the muscle memory fresh in my mind so I can send this boulder. I was definitely enjoying this boulder that I made, but I wanted to send it in this session so that for the next kilter board session, I could go back to trying other boulders. But I'm starting to learn this move a lot more. And this boulder is going to feature today's tip of the day. So speaking of this weird swing that I'm having to create while I'm, my legs are bent and I'm trying not to dab, what I was really learning, so basically one of the other reasons that it's hard to do this swing because your feet aren't like hanging below you and they're bent is not just because they're bent, but it's also because it's hard to optimize the movement that you want to create for the catch of this move. So often when we're trying to do a double clutch or any sort of, dyno into position, we always want to optimize sort of the catching of the egg is the metaphor I like to use, right? Like let's say you take an egg that is raw and you toss it in the air and you want to catch it. You don't want the egg to shatter and break, so you have to like absorb the momentum. And so this is a lot of times the way you want to think about absorbing the momentum of a dyno or a dynamic move. You want to sort of load the position as gently and as like the most smooth absorption of momentum as possible so that you're not shocking your grip too much. And this is obviously when we're trying to optimize for moves that are at our physical limit. If we're just jumping into a jug or something, okay, it doesn't really matter. Like if we know that the end position is going to be easy to hold, but the harder the end position is going to be to hold with your grip, the more you want to optimize this catching of momentum, and like catching the egg is like what I like to say. So the reason that this move is hard is because my legs are bent, I have to swing more side to side so I don't dab. But by swinging to the side, it's not allowing me to catch the egg on this dyno very well. I am like swinging to the side and it's really aggressive on my hands to try and hold these holds, and that's why I keep falling and I'm not able to hold the hold after I do the swing move. And so what I started to realize after I'm trying this boulder like a million times is what I need to focus on is creating a bit of upwards momentum into this end position. And this is a lot of times what you'll want to do on any sort of move that you're dynoing into, even lateral moves. Try and create upwards movement into it, because what it does is it helps you catch momentum. So imagine that we were like, I like to use these sort of exaggerated scenarios to talk about these ideas. So let's say we were actually below these two holds that we're jumping to and we're dynoing up into them. It would be a lot easier, right? Just because it's easier to sort of catch two holds as you're going up, and then your momentum is gradually slowed, and then it's more gradually your hands have to absorb the shock. And so obviously, if we want to try and take that element of dynoing upwards and apply it to this, lateral position that we're jumping from, the way that I started to connect these two ideas is I start trying to create a U shape with my hips. So what I do is I do a couple swings, and then when I swing to the right on my last swing before I jump, I go a little bit higher so that I can push my hips down as much as possible and try and create a U going back up without dabbing, which is like the crux element of this part. But I create a U shape so that at the end, I can create a bit of an upward arc, which helps me absorb the momentum a bit better, catch the egg, and create less sort of shock on my grip, and allows me to actually stick this position. But this took a lot of tries to really learn the subtleties on how to do this without dabbing and without my legs being straight. So, if I'm hanging, my legs are straight, this idea is a lot easier because I can just swing and my body's already lower because I'm hanging, and then I can go upwards. But it was hard to do this with the legs bent. But anyway, that's today's tip of the day. With sort of jumping in general, especially into positions that are hard to hold in your hands, you want to create upwards movement because it helps you catch momentum. So when I have my kilter board sessions, I like to only try and go for like 45 minutes, an hour max, just before I start getting way too tapped out, because a kilter board is just, super physical climbing and there's no relief. And so here we go for our send attempt. I am like at an hour, so I know that I've got 1, 2, maybe 3 tries left. And I definitely really wanted to send it on this session because, like I said, I think I'll only have one more kilter board session after this, actually, before we move to Montreal, and then the training is going to switch up a bit, and we're going to be doing a lot more bouldering. So this, I was definitely starting to get the nervousness, but also in combination with the psych and motivation to just put it down right away. And I got super fired up to get the send of this boulder. Toronto Flow, my first kilter board boulder. Please go try it. I think it's a lot of fun. Keep in mind the height of the kickboard is gonna influence the grade of this boulder. But yeah, I think it's definitely a very comp style boulder, not your typical kilter boulder, but I think it's pretty fun. And then in the future, when I make up some more kilter boulders, I'll probably try and make up some more like classical style boulders, because those are fun as well. So this session that we're featuring here, bouldering at Climbers Rock, is the next day after the kilter board session. And it's actually the second session of the day. In the morning, I had a spray wall session with Ben. But what happened was I actually deleted the videos off my phone before they made it to my computer. I thought I'd already transferred them. So we don't get to feature the spray wall session that I had in the morning. But it was okay, actually. It was sort of uneventful anyway. So we'll have a couple more spray wall sessions before we leave for Montreal, and we can try and take down some of our projects before we go. So yeah, this is the second session of the day, and what I just was deciding to do was have just a little short bouldering session at Climbers Rock. We have some new boulders up since we bouldered here last. I guess it's been a while since we bouldered here. It was like last training cycle, we had like one boulder session. But yeah, there was enough hard boulders up in the gym that I could just sort of have one of our classic sessions where we just go around and try and send boulders and don't have to make anything up, which is always a lot of fun. So I was actually quite fatigued for the session since I had a morning session of spray wall. So this boulder here was, I think, supposed to be the new like hard physical boulder up in the gym. But I had to call it early on this boulder. Actually, I only gave it maybe a few tries before my fingers were just a bit too zapped from training earlier in the day. And so I had to give up the FA of that boulder to Ben, who sent it shortly after. And then I just decided to move on. We had some more comp style stuff to get on as well, which is always a lot of fun when we decide to set more comp style stuff. So we had a cool little paddle here on the new set that I got on as well. Before moving on to the lab, which is our other section of bouldering, as you'll know from previous videos, Climbers Rock's got like two big boulder sections. The one in the front with the concrete walls is where we like to set most of our classic style bouldering. And then back here in this bouldering room, we call it the lab, and that's where we set like more of our comp style stuff. So as you can see, I just face planted on this boulder that we're trying here. This boulder is one set by our head setter, Jamie. And right before they were about to start their weekly lab set, I messaged him and said, hey, put a toe catch up. Because as we know, toe catches are probably my biggest weakness right now in terms of movement. And so he set a very nice one. As you can see, it's a very satisfying toe catch when you get it to work. I found that actually the launch of this boulder was a bit more difficult than catching the toe itself. Which I find that the toe catch is often what is hard for me and not so much the launch. So Jamie got a little bit backwards this time, but it's still good to work on, and this boulder is pretty cool. And it's got quite a tricky ending actually. So I guess I've talked a bit about this. You'll know from seeing me wear my wrist widget a lot. I have a wrist injury. I forget what it's called. It's like a something disc with like a bunch of letters, something disc in your wrist. I have to wear like a strap or tape it a lot of the time. Today, actually, I wasn't taping it. It was feeling okay. So sometimes I like to not tape it. But anyway, what I'm trying to get at is this wrist injury is kind of a permanent thing, and it sort of limits me from grabbing some holds in a certain way. Like probably forever it's going to be like this, or at least for a long time. And basically with these sort of like triangular volumes and whatnot, I can never wrap them like just as a meat hook or like a wrap, like when my fingers are being twisted outwards. So if my fingers are being twisted inwards, like to my chest, that's fine. But like if I was to try and grab this finish hold and wrap it so that my fingers were facing to the right, where you're really like loading the outside of your wrist, that's when I always re-hurt this injury. And so it means that I had to sort of pinch these volumes at the end. And then that's sort of how I always have to tackle volumes like this in the future, which is actually can be like a bit disadvantaging sometimes. And this was one of the things that I was like most scared about when I tweaked my shoulder, you know, like a week and a half ago now. It's, by the way, my shoulder is like, it's doing definitely better for sure. Still can't press off of it. And there's still like a couple sort of climbing moves that I can't do very well. Anything where I have to like have my shoulder like way extended out to the left, that's gonna hurt it a lot. But one of the most scary things that I was thinking about my shoulder was, is this injury going to influence how I have to climb on it for a long time? And like, yes, it will be healed at some point, but then there's always the fear of retweaking it. And even if I keep up with physio and, you know, do what I can to maintain the health, there's always the fear of like, is this going to create a mental block in the way I can climb? Because I can't meat hook holds on my right hand right now. And I don't see that changing for a long time because I've retweaked my wrist probably 3 or 4 times by just forgetting about this and wrapping a hold hard and then tweaking it. I actually did this 2 Canadian Nationals ago. I retweaked my wrist a week before the event, and then my event was ruined because my wrist was like in a lot of pain and I could barely climb. And so like now I'm worried that I have another situation. Like I guess this is a good time to talk about this. This boulder here is supposed to be one of the harder boulders in the lab right now. It's got this like sort of dihedral crux. And I'm trying to climb this boulder without using my left arm to mantle. So this is obviously kind of not how this boulder is supposed to be climbed. You're supposed to be pressing in this corner with your left arm. But I'm trying to see if I can find a way to do it where I'm not really pressing off of it, because my shoulder's still not good to press right now. And so I'm worried that I'm just not gonna have confidence in pressing anymore. Like I'll definitely need a little bit more time to figure out if this is the case. But I haven't attempted a dip yet. I haven't attempted to press off of it yet. And that's because I can tell it's gonna hurt. Like I've sort of pressed off it a little bit just at home. I don't know, I'm like at the counter or something, and I definitely feel it. So I don't wanna be pressing or dipping anytime soon. And I'm worried that this is gonna be something that's gonna be really easy to retweak by, you know, jumping into a press move too hard, or, you know, doing a runny do to the left and then I gotta land in a press. Like, is this gonna be retweaking my shoulder all the time? So that's something I'm still scared about. And that's sort of one of the things I was most upset about, was not like the sort of the instant ramifications of this injury. Like a few days off is no problem, but it's like, is this going to influence my climbing for a long time? And I hope it's not. That's going to be like a long time to see how that develops. So anyway, that wraps up a few training sessions. I think what's going to happen is we'll have one more episode where we're training in Ontario, and then I'm going to have like a short rest week, and then we're going to start our new training cycle while we'll be in Montreal. So we're moving to Montreal pretty soon, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be switching up the training a lot, doing a lot more of sort of what we were doing in Germany, which is just like going to all the gyms, trying to do all the boulders all the time. That's like my most fun way to train, and I always love it. So I'm like so hyped to move to Montreal, and the days are counting down now. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and you can look forward to that soon with one more episode in Ontario. Probably get on some kilter before we have to say goodbye to kilter for a while. So that'll be fun. Yeah, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.